When I walked in here, I thought, okay, yes, this really is a gigantic library. And indeed, when you know that it's the largest scientific library of Europe, indeed, people are working hard. And I was walking around, and the only thing I saw, indeed, were a lot of text. We have a lot of books here at the back. And then you close your eyes, please close your eyes. And you imagine to be, indeed, in a library. You imagine text, right? Now, what space is there, in there, for images? As in art history books, in design books, because I think we are also at the heart of where we are designing our society, right? My name is Marsha Simon. You can open your eyes. I'm an independent moderator. For the last couple of 10 years, I've been working as a moderator, presenter, dagvoorzitter, whatever you want to call it. And I've been interviewing many architects, designers, but also scientists about the process we are in. We are shaping society, we're shaping this world. Everything that you look at is indeed designed. Then how do you educate all these architects? And now, when we are working on this shaping the world, we have to collaborate, right? It's really important, I think, nowadays that we collaborate together. So I was very pleased last week to be moderating an event which was all about safety, and it was at the Ministry of Safety. And I never expected in my life to be there. And right now we are in the library, where it's all about also scientific research. And I find it very interesting that indeed we are reframing the perception of art in education. So I'm very curious who we are here with. I know I have my speakers here, my panel members, but for example, over there, may I ask who you are and what's your role and why are you here?
Hi, I'm a researcher and professor of ethics and philosophy here at TU Delft. And I'm very much interested in using more art in my courses.
Yeah, because you came here, spending your valuable time. Why did you come? Why is it interesting for you?
Well, I've been more and more involved in a course with one of the speakers, Eduardo. It's called Art, Empathy and Ethics. And we're really trying hard to merge engineering student education with more not only humanities, but also arts. So I'm really struggling to find the right way of doing this.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming as well. Okay, somebody else. I also expected a ton of students because it's all about their education, but they're, of course, hard-working all around us. So maybe here, I know him. He was my design colleague here, Hozan, right? What's your name?
My name is Hozan Zangana, and I'm a designer artist from Amsterdam.
And why did you come here to join this conversation?
So not for the art part, but for the technical part. I was interested because I studied at the Rietveld Academy and the Design Academy. So it's really the art and the form and shapes. And what we really missed is the technical part, the engineering part. So that is, yeah.
Yes, it's a joint effort, right? Coming closer together, collaborating. We'll get back to that. In a minute. What will we do? We have 3 chapters. We prepared 3 chapters. First, we will talk a little bit about art education in general, at large. You know, what can we learn actually from art education? Then we'll dive into heritage. As we said, we are here in an environment which is meant to be evidence-based, right? But what can images contribute to that? How reliable are images? Especially when they don't have any words to see. So normally you see a text and it comes with an image and then, okay, so it gets a little bit clearer. What is this all about? But then when you only see an image, what do? What would you do? So is there a more scientist in the audience, a researcher, somebody who doesn't usually work a lot with images? So all of you are working with images, then maybe we have to change. We have to change our content. Well, maybe I'll go to you as a physicist. I know you're one of the speakers, Eduardo. How do you use images in research normally?
It's about being objective. It's about being detached from the story of related to that image, and you put your aside from the object you are dealing with. It's the opposite when I am there in the art course, where you are experiencing that image rationally, but also emotionally. So it's a kind of very apparently separated stuff, but also rewarding intellectually, but not fully.
Okay, so we were discussing beforehand, the importance of art education, and then Eduardo actually came with a statement, and I would like to test how everybody feels again. So we had this statement: art education is a fundamental right. Art education is a fundamental right, like food and drinks and education in general. So art education is a fundamental right. For everybody who agrees, please stand up. Yeah, there's some doubts, some critics. So let me start here. You're doubting. Is it a fundamental right?
Yeah, it's because how you, if you say fundamental right, I think we have a lot of fundamental rights that are also very worthful. And I don't know if this is the most special one of the most, how do I say it, the best one.
Did you read? Did you ever read books about war, for example? Did you ever read a book about war, people in war, experiencing war? I just finished reading a book, and it's called The Choice of Edith Eva Eger. She survived the Second World War. And that book is full of the importance of art and imagination. So I wonder if you start thinking about in that direction. Yeah. Yeah, so even, when the fundamental, like food and drinks is gone, and imagination is still so very important in surviving.
There's a difference between imagination and art. So maybe it's because of the interpretation of the word you're using.
Yes, that's very good. So let's keep it sharp. In the back, there was somebody standing. Let me go to you. He's looking behind, but there's nobody behind him. So you were standing up. You think it's a fundamental right. Why do you?
Yeah, I do, because it's part of being human. It's part of the experience in life. It's part of how you grow and develop and live. So it just does depend on interpretation and how the question is interpreted. But that's how I interpret it, and I believe it is builds who we are as humans.
I think we have a panel member who's very excited right now with your contributions. So as you see, Marsha, Simon, moderator, and I'm a believer of collaborative conversation. I think we are creating knowledge here today as we are talking to each other in a plenary session. It's time for me to introduce my panel members. And I will start with Catelijne from Middelkoop. Can you please welcome her with a warm round of applause. She's a professor of visual communication design at the TU Delft. It's not only that, but we'll get to that later. You're a design fellow, right? What is it like to be a design fellow here?
I don't know. I transitioned from being that professor of visual communication design into this better role of a design fellow. I just started again. I get my second opinion, so ask me in about 5 years.
Okay, so visual communication and design. You have a colleague, a direct colleague, Maarten Wijntjes, associate professor, who is also has a PhD research on haptic perception of, is it true, shapes and line drawing? Am I correct? Yeah? Maarten Wijntjes, please enter the stage. And then, of course, to broaden the scope, these are from the TU Delft. We have another one from the TU Delft, which maybe you thought, okay, a physicist, an absolute pioneer, I believe, because you introduced art as an essential part when you become a physicist or whatever scientific you want to become, right? Eduardo Mendez, please. Warm welcome. And then to broaden it even further, we have Jeroen Stumpel from the University of Utrecht. Ecology, is that true?
That's right,
Yeah?
iconology, yes, but there might be confusion there.
Okay, what is the confusion there?
The usual confusion is that I'm an expert on Greek icons or Russian icons, and this is not the case. That term is, in general, it's about the development and meaning of image traditions and motifs in their cultural embedding. In other words, it's when you have when I see a painting, I immediately ask myself, what is the tradition? What does it mean? And what has it meant in different cultural contexts?
Yeah.
And
so you also educate art theory and art history, right? It's all in your background. And I usually never ask a speaker or a panel member this, but why did you come? Why is it valuable to talk about this topic today?
I think it is. Then you come to the question of heritage and the enjoyment of art and what not just art of today, but also art of the past may mean to us. And this is very much like, say, literature. One of the strange things about studying, for instance, literature is that you go into the past and there are people who are completely different have different lives from the lives that we have. They live in different worlds, and you wouldn't like to change place with them, and still you recognize them as partners, other human beings. And the great advantage of pictures, paintings, images, with regard to texts is that there is no linguistic barrier. There might be all kinds of cultural barriers, but a picture in Lascaux of a horse, maybe made by a culture I wouldn't be able to understand probably, but I know they painted a horse and it had meaning for them, and I could also relate to that fact.
Yeah. So the barrier is less high, you can really communicate in a more easy and direct way with images, is what you believe.
If I would have a great Latin poem here, nobody would appreciate it.
Jeroen Stumpel, please, join the scene. Yes, as I mentioned, as a fundamental right, Eduardo, why is it so important for you to state it that bold?
Well, I think it's about the definition of education. So if you would then look at that as Hertha Biester, this Dutch-British educator, tend to say, is that education is about becoming adult in the world. It's about being able to weigh what's good for you and what's good for the others, right? So when you're doing or making new technologies, you may have incredible impact nowadays in the whole planet, and you're not necessarily aware of that impact. So everybody, in my opinion, that would have the possibility to broaden the scope at which he or she look at the world would be beneficial. So that's a little bit the power of the statement. This does not mean that it's necessarily compulsory for everyone. It has to come from the inside, and you have to have the opportunity. What you should not do is to suppress when there is this need and when there is this possibility. So that's why we are naming it like that.
And where does this belief in you come from?
How I got there, you mean?
Yes.
For my personal needs, that was first. I think that there are designers and eventual architects in the audience. I was going to be an architect, and in the last minute I decided to become a physicist because it was beautiful, right? It's another sort of beauty, but it is. And many colleagues have made the same choice. I believe that engineering students also make similar choices. They are attracted by that, and not only because they're necessarily very good in math or whatever. And during that trajectory, they not necessarily can cultivate that engine that was there, because you have other constraints to deliver products, to deliver efficiency, to match deadlines, and overload studies, etc., etc. Something that we are often discussing here in this kind of meeting too. So it was a kind of inventing an opportunity for people that usually don't have access to this to reconnect to themselves, and through reconnecting to themselves, developed art that relates to a given technology, and to the moral, ethical questions, or environmental or whatever non-technical question that pops up. And I was lucky to create this about 5 years ago, because I found people like Filippo, who's a philosopher, and I'm not a philosopher, I cannot correct the assignments or guide the students through. I'm also not an artist, so I was able to hire and find extremely good artists that were able to do what I asked them to do. And so we developed the students in a direction that's inside out, where they're able to experience art and the world in the context of technology. So they are not detached from their studies anymore. They live it through another perspective.
Okay, thank you. And we will get back to that in chapter 3, right? Because then we will talk about also the future of this scientific education and science in general. Right. But to deepen it even, Jeroen, you mentioned that the making of images is a unique human behavior, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. There's no other living organism that makes drawings, for instance.
Well,
I mean,
we can discuss this, right? You know, it's really a bird not making an image. Sometimes when you think of a peacock, for example, but
sorry,
when you think of a peacock, for example, then some might doubt whether or not we are the only ones. But what I want to ask
evolution makes images. I mean, butterflies have eyes on their backs and so on, and flowers imitate insects to attract pollinators and so on. But the plant itself is not drawing. But we draw ourselves.
And what does that say about us?
I think that it says that we have a tremendous capacity for inner representation, sometimes called imagination. So you can think and imagine other worlds or shapes that aren't here. And then drawings and art, in the history of art, are quite often materialized imaginations. They might be representations of an actual world, but they always go through some sort of imaginative or representative act.
So you actually say that really it is the essence of who we are.
I think it's the essence of who we are. I think the making of images is much akin to all kinds of other things that we call fiction, like the telling of stories or the play acting of characters that aren't really there.
Okay.
And this.
So suppose indeed is relevant. You know, all this imagination, the images, indeed, and also to incorporate it in our educational system at large. Then, Catelijne, I know you as somebody who's been working hard the last decade to work on our educational system, from Design Academy to St. Lucas, where they have maybe another level, but still they are also contributing to creating our society. And now you are here in this environment. I would like to ask you, I know and you know that designers and artists, they are really embracing science and researchers, right? Mm-hmm. In how far, to what extent, is artistic research really a promising research for this environment as well?
I think this has already come up a little bit. It has to do with the words that we're using. So artistic research almost immediately implies that you know what the meaning of art is and that we can define it. But if I look at artistic research as an alternative form of doing research, so I rather prefer talking about research through making, then there are many forms in which we do research which are not as well documented as maybe the outcome of the research. So art history books are full of final products of this so-called research, artistic research perhaps. But I believe that once we start to document these processes much better, that maybe, and this is going against how we believe individual approaches in art schools are, it's probably less unique than sometimes we like to think. And I believe that there are many overlaps in how we go through these processes, and that if we pay more attention to it, that maybe there is a balance that we can reach between the scientific approach and the other approach of going through a research process. Yeah. So.
And to what extent do you feel it is really embraced, vice versa?
Sorry?
To what extent do you think it's really embraced vice versa in this environment when you're talking about the art of making or research making?
It depends. When I hear Eduardo talking from a passion, starting small, you asked us before, Maarten and I teach a course where we deal with artworks, and the course is mandatory, so we have a lot of students going into the program. And there I see a little bit of opportunity to also say, okay, we scaled it up. So look, yes, there's a possibility. But
Maarten, how do you feel about how mutual this love is, from design to researchers and researchers to design artists? Is it really embraced in your class?
In the class, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was thinking in another way whether scientists like artists and artists like scientists, and the students are still, I think, looking for their own identity, whether they are an artist or a scientist. Although, of course, they're at the university, but I know a number of good artists actually who studied at industrial design. One of them was the person who walked in the North Pole with that big ship behind him. Is it Dutch? Does anyone know his name?
Anybody knows it? The name? No.
He also fell. He's a sort of performance actor, performance artist. He's really cool, and he studied industrial design engineering. He stopped, I think, before finishing. And I also know another artist who's also quite established who also studied. So students are still looking for what they want, although they signed up for a study, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, we also still don't know what we want, but we are a little bit more mature. And I think artists and scientists sometimes like each other a lot, but they still have to search on what level, and that is the interesting point. So the collaborations can form on a lot of different levels. And what you see, for example, is a thematic level, such as climate problems. Let's work on that together. Well, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
But you can also work on it on very other different levels, like a process level.
And in your experience, I imagine you talk a lot also to the students, how it contributes to their own development. There must be also some excitement when they learn your profession. What are the success stories here in the last years that you've been teaching this?
Well, mostly it's a little bit multifaceted, the course, because we are at industrial design engineering, which is all group work, and our course is individual. And they really like to do the individual work next to all the other group work assignments. It's also a bit less restrictive than the other courses, so they get some freedom, but some students don't like the freedom because they just want to be told what they have to do for a good grade. And we do that a little bit, less. You have to strike a good balance because you can also not say, you can also not be totally vague. I mean, we still have regulations we have to follow, which are totally good to have, good education. We're at university.
Yeah. But this working from assignment to assignment, to really be told what to do. I think Eduardo, you mentioned it. They are used to working from assignment to assignment. That's why you also found it important to incorporate this new way of working, right?
Yes, that's correct. That was usually the goal, right, of engineering, is how to learn to make a bridge. So you pillar 1, pillar 2, pillar 3, and you have a bridge. So that's what is the hardcore of that. Then it became a much more sophisticated, education, right? With more challenging new technology very fast. But the methods we use is still to give all the opportunity to learn all these possibilities of corresponding to be efficient and good in solving well-defined assignments. While the artists, they don't start there. They start with something inside, an experience, emotions, insights, and the way they will get to the final assignment is the opposite of a boss who tell you what to do. So there is a discovery that is non-linear at all, that it may happen in a research laboratory of hard sciences, but that's not how we start.
So when you started to incorporate this new way, how did people respond to you introducing it to their course?
I got convinced that I must do something when I was in sabbatical in Cornell, and my host chemist and big friend, a German professor, was receiving a resident artist, Kim Soo-ja, from Korea, that I knew the work. And we went very well together and discussed with her. I had this click, understanding the way how she does. She goes in meditation, then she creates a concept, and then she creates incredible installations all over the world. And I had to bring this experience to people around me, and I went to talk to people at different places here, until I went to my educational committee, who loved the idea in chemical engineering. And they said, well, write a description of these courses, and then it was approved. Then I looked for Filippo, and we built it from nothing. But it's based on, how can I say, knowledge, on transformative learning, where you use internal experiences to create moments where are transformative moments, such as it's a process of individuation, where unconscious, personal or collective, how can I say, statements or properties you have inside become conscious. And that's why it's so rewarding to make art and to experience art. So if you can bring this to the context of your engineering studies, we study our students with learning specialists who interview them 3 years in a row. And at the end of the day, people become more empathic, they become more responsible, they start to have this will to really contribute and not just have a good job. So these are all internal things that art triggers naturally, that we don't offer, right?
Yeah, so that's something that it brings forward, right? Jeroen, at the University of Utrecht, is it the same story? Did it also, this development of introducing art education in general at the educational system of Utrecht? Or was it a bit different?
Not that I know of. It might well be. But within art history, we had it. And in history, so in the humanities department, also in the history of science, there's much more interest in tacit knowledge, implicit knowledge, practices of craftsmen, the role of materials. And I started with first-year students to have them really make their own paint, make their own etchings and so on, because that had sort of disappeared from the curriculum. The idea that you make something, not digitally, but materially, and that is one way to understand the production aspects of the production of art of the past. But the same has happened in science, where there's history of science, where there's interest in what happened in laboratories and what kind of secrets were passed that were not published, that are not part of the published history of science. And the same in, as I said, in history, the role of materials or the meanings of materials, not just battles or politicians, but also importance of aluminum or iron or that kind of thing. So that's from letters, let's say, reading letters, to objects, stuff, and processes.
Yeah. And now fast forward to this fast-paced world we live in right now, with the high technology being developed. Maarten and Catelijne, I go to you. In your course, is it focused more digitally, or has it also to do with material?
It definitely also has to do with materials, but we start giving the students a digital collection of works to study. And they don't know, for example, the scale of these images. We don't tell them what it is. They have to do a reverse image search, and they find out. And of course, there's a lot of information you can find on the internet, but which information is true, what belongs to what, where does it come from? And then ultimately, our selection is based on interesting works that have several. It's quite layered selection. So the materials that artists use to create the images, they play a role, but also the number of artists involved, or the non-humans involved. So the technologies involved, and maybe you can add, Maarten.
Well, you have something to add on Catelijne?
I was just thinking maybe I missed something. So I was talking about how we put the...
Well, and they also have a lot of ways of communicating. They learn a lot of visual communication already, the students at IDE, but not so much digitally. I mean, they do digital sketching with Photoshop, etc., but not yet sketching with code. So we incorporated that as form of artistic expression to involve a heavily digital medium, which is code, to make their final assignment.
And maybe earlier I was talking about this balance between scientific and an artistic approach to research. And on the one hand, we have a fantastic drawing staff at the industrial design faculty, and the Delft way of drawing is really a thing. But then, we're drawing with code. So on the one hand, we have the pencil experience, but then we have the coding experience. And that is also creative expression. And because they're open-ended, at least in our course, the final results, although of course there's a rubric and we can evaluate it, the outcome is quite open. That is also, again, it's the opposite of draw this thing that you see in front of you. And so I think it's also a little bit of an attempt to even out at least the scope, or show the students what the possibilities are when you're talking and dealing about with images and using images in your research. So.
And can you maybe share a moment in your career here that you thought, yes, this is what I'm hoping for. This is why I'm working so hard on this course.
Well, the course title again. It's visual communication design. That's how you started talking. It's a very broad field, and it's very specific. And there are a lot of opinions, maybe even more definitions of it than of art. So to teach students or meet the expectations that students might have when they talk about visual communication design, also my own expectations came in. And my background is completely practical. Vocational school, art academy. It's all about making, and theory was in the background. So if you're talking about the quality that can be reached, I only know how to reach a very good quality through making. But then talking about it, rationalizing it, and then telling students here that did not have that practical experience that this is what visual communication design is at a master level was too big of a scope. Besides that, I also realized that a lot of the students, when you gave them an image, they lacked the vocabulary to critically talk about what they saw in the image. They were looking for right or wrong. The nice thing, of course, when you then don't make students look at an image from a newspaper, but let them look at an artwork, which sometimes we know where it came from, but sometimes we don't. It requires a completely different approach of the students to talk, to start to analyze, to describe. So you asked earlier what are the biggest accomplishments or the success stories. I think a general success is that I believe the students are a little bit more visually literate, and they're able to be a little bit more sensitive in describing images. And so there's a little bit, I think, nuance is what we're getting to.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Eduardo, let's go to the physicist. When did you think along, your path, yes, this is why I'm doing it? Can you give an example?
You mean in relation to the art course, right? I can give many, many examples. Because
you have to pick one. I'm sorry, I'm running out of time already.
It's about you have this student that looks very, very much the typical engineering student, and then 8 weeks later, he gives a piece of artwork that shows a very deep awareness of how he or she is as a person. She brought the emotions that come with, and that those emotions gave an idea to write the ethics assignment. So it's just this natural, how can I say, it's not evolution, it's just being a space to pop up as a person. And this transformative moment that the person will get more self-esteem, higher self-esteem, be more safe by stating their emotions, is the moment where I say, that's it. This person is not a person, it's not only a student, it's incorporating their studies in themselves. And I use it like this, but this does not exclude these other aspects that art brings, because it's an experience. From understanding and experience in drawing to crafting, they are all different experiences. So they, in my opinion, should be there, connected to different topics and disciplines offered to students.
Thank you very much. That's very beautiful. Can I get a big round of applause for the people that are creating this education system and are really trying to make it a difference, right? And then I have to fast forward because I'm looking at the time and we're running out of time. We also started a bit later, right? In about half an hour, we will open the exhibition when images remain at the entrance. And I wonder, Catelijne, as a design fellow, you were asked to create that piece of art we will look at, right? And we were talking about the making of it, the whole process, that you actually put to practice what you are teaching. Am I right?
Yeah, I try to do that when I can.
Yeah, what was it like to work on that new piece of art as the entrance?
I'm starting to recover a little bit because it was a quite intense physical and mental experience. That sounds cheesy, as if I'm an artist talking about. But I have been staring at the screen quite a bit. Maarten and I came up with a concept. It's Maarten who dragged me into this setting.
I was dragged in by Geertje.
Yeah, there she
her
is.
fault.
Geertje is here, responsible for making exhibitions here.
There is a great collection of reproductions of artworks here in the collection. But how do you decide which image is allowed to make it into the exhibition and which one not? So we tried to come up with some kind of sense. And ultimately we decided, it doesn't really make sense. Whatever choice we make, it's not complete. And we don't know why these images are really here.
So wait. For the people who really don't understand yet, right? So there is a collection from the TU Delft, which is a collection of glass slides, right? You got to see these images. How many were there?
Geertje,
sitting here. She was actually not supposed to be here, but she is, so we're very happy.
I think in total, all subjects around 6,000-7,000.
6,000-7,000 images with no text?
Well, some of the series do have text. So, for instance, we know they were used in chemical stuff, but the art history collection had no context whatsoever. We could see that it was really collected by someone because it had a lot of different handwriting. But we still are not sure who collected it and how it has been used.
But it is marked as heritage. So the relevance is there, right? Do you know why, shortly?
I think because they found it somewhere in a basement at some point, which is most of the time. And
should put something in a basement.
and we know it has been used in education. We just are not completely sure in which way it has been used and by whom and for how long.
It's funny because I see all those students sitting around us, and they miss this whole point of when you want to make something relevant, you put it in a box, you put it in the basement, right? You missed out, people. But so the relevance is there, and then the team is asked what to do. How do you start?
We tried to make series. So we actually looked at the design of the window, where it had to go, looked for some kind of principle that could give some kind of guideline to make some choices. So there are 8 panels. Maybe we could come up with 8 chapters, 8 something.
Maybe we can see a sneak preview of the reel. Can I ask my technique to send the reel to the screens? There it is. What are we looking at, Catelijne?
Oh, yeah. So it's our selection of slides, which we couldn't complete.
Image there.
Yeah. Okay. With the we couldn't find 8 complete series to put. We couldn't come up with a full story, which was nice. And any story that we picked felt like we're leaving something out. And so what all the images do have in common is that we don't know why they are there.
No, there was not a lot of text, handwritten things, but not a lot of text, yeah?
And we don't know, we are absolutely pretty much unaware of the context in which they were created. Of course, we could go back and find that, but in this collection as it was, we couldn't find it.
So it was,
thought,
you were
what
freely
if we can
interpreting?
create their relevance, make this selection particularly relevant by connecting, suggesting a context in which they might have existed. So what we did is that we used a lot of time to create the in-between space, the space that we don't know anything about.
So let me. So we have all the dias as squares, and in the background you created an extra image, right?
Yes, we created an overlay to illustrate, to tell a new story of how these images might be connected, not only to the time that they were used here between 1900 and 1950, but also between the way with the way that we are using images now. So the color images that you see come by every once in a while, they're actually images that we use in the course that we are
Okay, thank you for clearing up, because
Sorry.
because I was quite amazed. I saw a meme picture coming by, and then I thought, okay, it was in the basement. But it's an extra images you put on. Okay,
we'll leave it in the basement.
Because I think that was also the starting point. These glass slides in the basement were once used in art education by Huib Luns, probably. We could go into that at some moment, maybe not. But we wanted to combine his art education with our own art education. So we created fake heritage, basically, by also creating these slides.
And how did you create that bridge between then and now?
That's it.
This is the bridge. Yes, but
take us to the bridge.
Yes, but can you elaborate a bit on that bridge? Like, what is it connecting?
It's I collaborated with AI, and I gave a few prompts, which I did have to direct a little bit, in order to make some kind of connection to Huib Luns and his love for Rembrandt. In his inaugural speech, he spoke about Rembrandt, and he spoke about the backgrounds in the paintings of Rembrandt being very interesting because they weren't specifically tied to any time, where he thought that other artists, other painters, when they painted a very important person, they would always show some kind of background that would pin down when it was painted. And our background doesn't really have that. So at the moment that Rembrandt's sky is blending into the forest of Bob Ross, this feeling is still almost the gloominess of that. At least that's how I perceive these black and white glass slides nowadays. But yeah, there is this connection. But yeah, every image we started from the AI and I and the prompt writing, we started from the top left, just the way we would read, and we went all the way to the right bottom, and then the next panel came, and the next panel came, and as I started to get to know the decisions I made my choice, every time I got 4 options for the next piece of context, the next puzzle piece to put in. I had to make a decision, and I only know that the more and more, because time was running out, I relied on my knowledge just as in art school, which are basically the principles of form giving. I was looking at, there was not much color, but I looked at the light, I looked at contrast, I was looking for depth, I was looking for, and I felt that, yeah, that I was relying more and more and more on my practical just experience of making these decisions to start to guide my way to the end and this.
So it's really a collaboration of team heritage, and then this history of Hoop, you know, that you're trying to bridge to now. Then you use technology, new technology, AI, but then you figured out it really needs man-made decisions.
Yeah, but
right?
also I couldn't have done it. So there's something really interesting. The images that used to be projected large by Huip Luns in these classes, and the images that we use, that we sometimes show large, the students look at them endlessly. When you put them, they are the foreground, but now they become the background, and they're also the layer behind it. So there's this exchange between when is what important, and I hope, but I don't know because we haven't experienced it yet. When you're outside and you actually move by the panel, because the scale difference, that I don't know what effect it will have, but I believe it might have some effect how you perceive the importance of the elements that are there.
Yeah,
and maybe even, I don't know, but will the new images be more important than the older ones because you saw Nyan Cat come by and you're in a meme moment right now? Or is it the other ones because, those are kind of little hooks that maybe since it will be up for a while, we can do some tests.
Yeah, it will be up for a while. We'll open it in about a couple of minutes. Maarten, when you will stand in front of it together with students maybe in the future, and you will be eavesdropping what they are saying, what are you hoping to hear? What will happen with this?
Yeah, I hope they will also have to laugh a little bit because it's a funny piece in the end.
Yeah.
And that they will also maybe start to use their phone to do Google image reverse search to see what the hell is depicted here. And then perhaps do some cool discoveries of all these images, because that's one of the things that at least I enjoy reading from the students when they do the analysis, is that they sometimes get so excited by discovering something. And I think that's a universal excitement that everyone, at least at the university and perhaps also artists, share, this longing for discovery.
Longing for discovery. So we've already talked about a couple of things that are very important that art education could actually bring up and bring forward. And I think we also got to this point that fun, enlightenment, what we're just experiencing, is a very big, important part of our education, right? So, Eduardo, let me get back to you. How important is that feeling of enlightenment and humor and joy for your part of this education system?
I could answer with the antagonist example. How would that be without that? Right? So
but is it a part of that system already?
So how would that be to be a professional that has incredible impact in the world as an engineer or a scientist or a teacher without that human side that you keep suppressing because constraints, demands, etc. So if by opposition, it's a demonstration by opposition that if you enhance that connection, that natural way to look at the world and society, irrespective in the way you use this experience that only art provides, well, we can only be better professional, more responsible, more connected to the rest of the world. So in education, I repeat, I think we should have this fan of possibilities. But the university is also providing new technologies, is the place where new knowledge is developed, right? So we heard a few times the word research, and we see that there are different ways to use art as a research, how can I say, environment and tool at the same time. I don't know if it's the good way to state that. But we also could have said that we could go for art science education and research, such as, which means that when you bring a scientist and an artist together, they're not just there, one, to create the material to illustrate what the artist wants, or the artist to illustrate an explanation of a given science or a result, but together they create new questions that eventually more, how can I say, pertinent than each one would state that alone. And the answer to that question is art science. It's another way to look at knowledge and develop knowledge. So there are different ways to do this, and this is the place to do it.
Okay, so imagine this place, indeed. There's still a long way to go, but you are working hard to really create space for this art education. Imagine we are doing it. What is a call to action you would call out to this audience here to work on?
Well, there are many colleagues at the different levels at the university sitting here that, and the other faculties that have this kind of same impulse to contribute and to create. There is support. I think that there is a mindset that's not a majority, but I really would like to see that we do have, how can I say, organization or a platform that could bring all this at various levels, from education to research. That's part of being technical education. It's not that it does not exist. We have many examples in Stanford, MIT Lab, Lausanne, etc. So it is there since more than 20 years.
Okay, so we really need a platform still to promote it, to talk about it. Yeah, maybe we need a continuation of these kinds of conversations.
Of course.
Yeah, with several people aboard. Yeah, Jeroen, what would be your call to action, or maybe next step to build this art education environment here?
Well, if there was a platform, that would be great. But I'm afraid I'm going to plead for something that I already do, which is also do art history. Because all these wonderful slides, you know, and they're wonderful things, you know, these glass. And I'm old enough to have been in a class where you had glass slides, not the big ones that they have here, because they're sometimes 100 years old. But anyway, they were used in course on art history. And I think if you do art education, then art history is an essential part of it.
That's, I think, very logic, right, to us. Thank you very much. Maarten, you, the next step. What do we need to create art education in this bigger environment?
Yeah, sometimes I think of something and then I realize that it already is there, because, for example, I would like to have artist in residence, but I found out there is already an artist in residence program at TU Delft. So,
but maybe it isn't known enough.
Yeah. That's the platform problem, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Something else, Maarten?
Yes, well, I would like to have some kind of low threshold way of inviting artists for talks, because if you invite a scientist, they're already paid by their salary, so they just get a simple fee for, you know, travel and some extra. And for artists, it costs them a lot of time, etc. So it's pretty high threshold actually to pay an artist and a good, to reimburse them for what they're doing.
A fair pay,
because it's really a different world financially. They're all like way below minimum wage.
So you need financial support.
Yeah.
The ideas are there.
Yeah.
But you need financial support.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Catelijne, you?
I think I would like a physical space that is beyond the regular workshops, but where makers, scientists, creators of all levels can meet, ask each other questions, exchange this knowledge. It's an extension of the platform and everything my colleagues said.
Yes.
But a space. So we're starting a lab, but we don't have a real physical space yet. So.
Okay, so there will be a platform.
Yep.
There will be art history. You'll be teaching it. and you will get the money. If anybody knows where to find the money, then go talk to Maarten. And then, of course, the next celebration will be the opening of the lab then.
Yeah, one of the occasions where we will meet again.
That's a good idea.
Where do you imagine this lab then to take place?
Now that it's filled
The
with
library
a
team?
giant audience, but why not?
Should it be close to a library like this, or where do you imagine a physical lab?
Well, somewhere here on campus is nice, of course, but also some of the what can we do inside discussions will be very important to. I'm involved with quite a lot of talks about setting up labs and then what is there, but then often the messy part is not allowed. And so we also have to make a mess and be able to fail, and also to keep those failures so we can learn from it and not only strive for perfection without knowing what we understand that is before we understand it.
I just heard that indeed the piece of art is ready to be
oh my
to be revealed, which was quite spannend. But we have to round up. But maybe there are some questions in the audience. Do some people have questions for our members of the panel? No? Then let us close our eyes one more time. Imagine that indeed we are all makers. Yes, we are creating, making, building this educational environment together, right? Yes, please, close your eyes. Thank you. You are part of it. You are a maker of that educational system. And it's, of course, scientific education. And in the end, it will be professionals. There will be researchers, scientists, hopefully working together with all kinds of different people, designing, building our collaborative society. Now, we worked hard. The dreams of these four come true. We have a platform, we have a lab. 7 years from now, what do you see? What changed? What kind of professional scientists, researchers were developed? What changed? 7 years from now. Please open your eyes, and I will ask. Take maybe one word or a sentence. What changed when art education becomes a part of the scientific education? What changed?
I think that our students, TU Delft students, have a much broader mind, and things will speed up in the combination, and a more holistic approach.
A more holistic approach. Here?
I don't know how to translate this in English, but a term I like in Dutch is perspectivische lenigheid.
So, yeah, Floris Alkemade also said it, right?
It's sort of an agility to see questions or problems from different angles, and it's something you do by default.
So you become flexible in multi-perspectives, right? Yeah. Here, what changed?
I would like to see engineering students and engineers in general not being ashamed of being engaged in political, social issues, taking that as a core part of their profession, not something they do in their private life.
Great, thank you for that. Here, maybe one?
I was thinking the same, the holistic approach. Yeah.
Holistic approach. It's funny, if you have a moderator looking for interaction, you have to do this. I'm kidding, but it's great learning. So holistic approach, right? Last one, maybe here. What changed?
I would like to see more color on the campus, or I would expect that to be there. So artworks by students on the campus, on the Mekelweg, those kind of places. Out.
Thank you. One last one here. What changed?
Grayscale.
Perhaps more reflection from the students on their lives, on their environment, on everything.
Reflection. So art education is also bringing reflection. Do we agree to these differences in 10 years? Well, I'm hoping to be seeing them. I want to thank you for listening, to be really involved in this conversation. And I also want a big round of applause for our speakers here.
Thank you.
And of course, also a big round of applause for our technique today, because you've done a great job. I could run around, no weird sounds. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Also, I would like to thank the people behind the cameras, because we captured all of this so that we can share the knowledge that we created today in a later time. And I think that right now it's time for drinks, but not before we go and reveal the piece of art. So let's stand up and all collectively go to the piece at the entrance.